Sisters, brothers, comrades, socialism is rising. We have shown in Seattle that it is not only possible for a socialist to be elected, but also for a socialist to be re-elected. And we did so with the entire political establishment and the corporate media united against us. We did so as an unapologetic fighter for working people. We defeated an onslaught of corporate money. And we did so by building perhaps the strongest grassroots campaign in Seattle's history. You see, the working class can fight back and win. Movements based on the power of ordinary people can transform society. Socialists have to be the backbone of such transformative movements, offering ideas and organization to a new generation looking for fundamental change against the misery of unemployment, poverty, wages, lack of affordable housing, racism, sexism, and the destruction of our planet through climate change. We do have an alternative. We can fight for a democratic socialist change, and we can win. Corporate establishment Democrats united with Republicans to try and defeat our movement in Seattle. They are furious about the $15 an hour minimum wage we won last year, which is taking a slice away from their mega profits towards wages for gravely underpaid workers. They are angry that we stopped 400% rent hikes for 7,000 working class families living in public housing. And now they are livid that we are exposing slumlords and are fighting for rent control and affordable housing. They threw in their corporate cash against us and made this the most expensive Seattle City Council race ever. We had to win 3 times more donors than our opponent to match their efforts, and we did it without taking a dime from corporations. We raised more money from ordinary people than our opponent in spite of our $150,000 in corporate cash. The corporate media, the Seattle Times, TV ads and reports fought against us. We had to build a grassroots campaign to counter all of that. And with more than 600 volunteers, we knocked on 90,000 doors and overwhelmed them with people power. The big developers and corporations like the anti-15 Alaska Airlines, they were united against us. But we united labor on our side with more than 30 unions endorsing us. And we united environmentalists, community activists, Black Lives Matter activists around the banner of our working class campaign. Workers and their organizations, first and foremost labor, united, we can challenge corporate politicians and offer an independent working class alternative. That means being independent from corporate cash, and it also means being independent of the corporate parties and the corporate establishment. It means being against right-wing Republicans who backed my opponent, but also independent of the Wall Street-driven Democratic Party machine. We needed a powerful movement to win, and we built on the momentum from our victories, from the transformative win on the $15 minimum wage, from tenants rising up, from LGBTQ people demanding justice, from gender and from racial justice activists. You cannot serve business and workers at the same time. We need our own tools to fight. We need a mass party of, from, and for working class people. We won because working people are fed up with the big business establishment. We won because people want to build a movement for housing justice against skyrocketing rents and robber baron developers. We won, crucially, because we are well organized around a set of ideas and program that unambiguously stands with working people, the poor, youth, and people of color. We won with clear socialist ideas and a tightly knit organization, Socialist Alternative. Let me emphasize that working people are angry and willing to fight back. Movements are needed to turn this anger into a force, but you also need an organization with a socialist strategy, willing and able to mobilize labor, challenge unapologetically the establishment and their corporate backers. You need the determination and the skills of organized socialism, yes, even in a local race, even in a district. I want to take a moment to thank all the Socialist Alternative members throughout the country who worked on the campaign in countless ways. Now we have an opportunity to use this platform to build movements of the working class and the oppressed while spreading socialist ideas. This struggle, this fight against capitalist domination, exploitation, and environmental degradation is an international one. Across the world, there are protests, strikes, and colossal movements against the politics of austerity. Globally, the capitalists are trying to make us pay for a crisis that their system created. Meanwhile, we see ongoing wars and a migrant crisis that flows from the dog-eat-dog logic of capitalism. The world is crying out for socialist solutions. Socialist Alternative stands in political solidarity with the Committee for a Workers' International, a worldwide organization with activists in over 50 countries from Nigeria to Brazil and Greece to India and South Africa and beyond. We stand on common ideas and methods informed from decades of international experience in the workers' movement. At a time when millions of people are searching for fundamental change and rejecting establishment politicians, we need to build an organization of thousands of activists popularizing socialist ideas. Millions of people, working class people, young people, are asking once again, what is socialism? Socialism is a global society that delivers a high standard of living to all human beings in an environmentally sustainable manner. A society that offers human beings the opportunity to live lives to their fullest creative and joyous potential. But how can such a society be attained? For that, we need to have a global economy where ordinary people have full democratic control over the key decisions that affect their lives. A society based on social justice where discrimination on gender and racial basis has been relegated to the history books. A society based on full employment where all workers receive a living wage, with high quality and free health care for everyone, free education from kindergarten through college, decent pensions and good housing accessible for all. A society where communities are based on solidarity and cooperation rather than plagued with fear and alienation. A society where we have ended the threat of climate catastrophe by rebuilding our infrastructure on a green basis and leave the remaining fossil fuels permanently in the ground. These democratic socialist changes are both necessary and achievable. However, as Bernie Sanders points out, we currently live in a society dominated by the oligarchy of the super rich. Income inequality and exploitation are driving millions into desperation and bitterness. That's why his call for a political revolution against the billionaire class has had such an electrifying effect on hundreds of millions of people. At the first Democratic presidential debate, Sanders declared, "What democratic socialism is about is saying that it is immoral and wrong that the top 1/10 of 1% in this country own almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. Sanders is giving voice to the enormous desire for change after a decade of economic crisis where millions lost their jobs and homes, and the so-called recovery has overwhelmingly benefited the 1%. There is deep anger because the political process is completely dominated by corporate interests. Cuts to social programs and attacks on the rights of workers are endless. Structural racism and sexism remain entrenched. And because no decisive measures are being taken to address global warming. Underlying all of this is a diseased and decaying social system. But how does one take on the casino capitalist system as Sanders describes it? And how does one create a society where all people do well, not just a handful of billionaires? Poll after poll shows that people under 30 support socialism and capitalism in roughly equal numbers. The increased acceptance of socialism is the product of the unmasking of capitalism over the past 8 years during and after the Great Recession, and the new wave of social struggle that has broken out nationally and internationally. From the Wisconsin uprising in 2011 to Occupy to the fight for 15 to Black Lives Matter, we have seen working people, young people, and people of color standing up against the rule of the 1%. Sanders has correctly stressed the role of mass movements in changing society. In Seattle, in the wake of my election in 2013 as the first socialist city council member in a century, we built a grassroots campaign with union support and won a citywide $15 minimum wage, the first in the country and the biggest victory for working people in a very long time. This helped inspire activists in other cities, including San Francisco and Los Angeles, to fight and win 15. We are currently leading the fight for rent control and affordable housing in Seattle, which has also had major national significance. The social power of working people is the key force that can galvanize all the strands of struggle and can push back decisively against the corporate agenda and in favor of the needs of ordinary people. But social struggle needs to be combined with building a new political force for the 99%. Bernie Sanders' campaign, which raised $28 million in the past 3 months and has refused corporate donations, shows the potential for independent working class politics. This is ultimately incompatible with the framework of the Democratic Party, which is dominated by corporate money and a neoliberal apparatus. We need an independent mass party of and for working class people to fight for their own interests here and now, linking it to the socialist transformation of the society. In Seattle, when offered a clear alternative, the rank and file of the Democratic Party was won over to supporting an open socialist. Union members, youth, people of color, and LGBTQ people came together to fight for their common interests, for higher wages, housing justice, and an end to discrimination. We can build on this model through educating ourselves, building grassroots struggles from below, and supporting independent working class politics. A government acting in the interests of the 99% would, as Sanders has advocated, enact progressive taxation to create a massive jobs program, rebuilding the nation's infrastructure on green lines. But even to carry through these basic measures means completely breaking the stranglehold of Wall Street and the biggest corporations over society. This requires more than breaking up the big banks or restoring the Glass-Steagall Act, although such measures would certainly be positive steps. It would entail bringing the big banks into public ownership, along with the big energy companies and other key parts of the economy. Why is this necessary? Consider that around 90 companies are responsible for 2/3 of carbon emissions in human history. 90 companies. They have wielded an effective veto on any serious attempt to end global warming. Socialism is about working class democracy. The 500 big corporations that dominate our economy, control our political system, and degrade our environment should be taken into public ownership under democratic workers' control and management. This way, the resources of society could be used to benefit everybody, not just for the profits of a tiny handful of billionaires. In short, this will require a revolution. Working people need to rebuild a fighting labor movement which stands in solidarity with all those oppressed under this system. We will need to rebuild the struggles that can defeat the horrors of capitalism. We need a powerful mass movement in the streets, workplaces, and campuses with an independent political voice in the halls of power. And for such a movement to succeed, it must be linked to the movements of working people and young people across the world. Capitalism is a global system in decline. This is expressed not just in the climate crisis, but in the collapse of societies across the Middle East and North Africa after decades of imperialist intervention leading to the biggest wave of refugees ever seen in human history. Global crisis must be faced through global solidarity. Creating a viable socialist future for the people of the planet based on the utmost democratic participation of ordinary people is the paramount challenge of our era. The time is now. We must get organized. I appeal to you. Join me in dedicating your life to building the socialist movement. If you are a member of Socialist Alternative, challenge yourself to get more involved, to build the organization, and to educate yourself further about our socialist ideas. If you haven't yet joined us, then please consider doing so tonight. Fill out an application to join, donate to our cause, and study our reading program. There is no better way to learn our methods, the methods that produced these victories, than getting involved in our movement. We have shown that when we fight, we can win. We got elected and we won 15. And then we went up against a prepared and angered establishment in this election, and we won with our ideas, our sacrifice, and our well-organized approach. We can win much more going forward, but only if we step up. Everything we win, the capitalists will try to take back from us to maximize their profits. The final victory, the socialist transformation of society, is necessary to wipe away exploitation, oppression, war, and poverty once and for all. Join me in fighting for a better world. Join Socialist Alternative. Solidarity.